Hi guys, my name is Nick Broughton and I'm a Randomfish. Hit the subscribe button and let's all be Randomfishes together, shall we? Now, many years ago, in the realms of when I was a child, a lovely TV show popped up on BBC. Well, technically at that point it was CBBC. I've covered a few CBBC shows over the past few years that I've done this show. Ka-Ching, Basil Brush Show, Story Tracy Beaker, Chucklevision, Young Dracula, the list kind of goes on. But a show that I haven't covered is a game show. And a show that, quite frankly, was awesome. Get Your Own Back. Who remembers that show? A show in which kids could take their parents that they felt they did something wrong against them, maybe they didn't pick them up from football practice enough, or maybe they're just too embarrassing. And then these kids have to compete against each other in challenges, while the parents attempt to stop them from completing the challenge. And in the end, the kid who has the most points gets to dunk their parent. And when I say dunk, oh boy! Hey, you Americans, you know your precious little Nickelodeon slime? Yeah, we've got that beat. 'Cause while in your shows, the Nickelodeon slime would be poured on someone and they said, I don't know that, or some random phrase that they did, I can't remember exactly. But for us, we had a tank of the stuff. A full-on gunge tank. And these parents would sit in two little chairs that went up a small rail. Every time a kid got an answer right, the parent went up a notch. And when you got an answer wrong, the other parent would go up a notch. And whichever parent got to the top, there was that beautiful moment where a button would appear and it would glow, and it would say, push that button and get your own back. The comes flying down, the parent is dunked in gunge, everybody's happy. Except for the adult, of course. So why am I talking about this show? Well, first off, did you hear the description of it? The show was genius. And quite frankly, the other reason why I wanted to talk about it is kind of interesting. The show very much ran on for many years. I believe stopping somewhere in 2003. Maybe a little bit after that. But the fact is that the show itself did not have the worst premise in the world. The idea of punishing one's parents for the things that they did to us was kind of awesome, and kind of a brilliant no of an idea. Honestly, did I honestly think that every parent deserved to be gunged? Of course not. Even as a kid I didn't really think of that, but I'll be honest, rewatching the show now as an adult, I can kind of still laugh at the excuses that the kids give for why they want to dunk their parents. The best one I think I ever came across was the dad who was incredibly embarrassing, who would not stop telling bad jokes. Not only was he gunged, but I found myself cheering when he was gunged. This was back when I was about 11, maybe 12 years old. Nowadays I'm the one who does the bad jokes myself, and, well, let's face it, it's kind of fun to do. But you can look at this game from two perspectives. One is the perspective of a kid, and the other is the perspective of an adult. And actually a third one, where you can look at it as a parent. As a kid, you see it as righteous retribution, this thing that appeared out of nowhere that gave you this terrific chance to finally take your parents down a notch. And if you were like me and you lived in the southwest of England, and you ended up, and you didn't actually have the ability to get on that show, you could still kind of use it as the ultimate threat against your parents, being like, if you don't behave, I'm going to put you on this show, and then I'm going to dunk you. Think how you're going to feel about that. And of course, my parents kind of gave me the look as if to say, you put us on that show and we will probably dunk you in the gunge first, before you ever get a chance. Which I have to say is fair enough, even by my standards. But then as you look at it back as an adult, you can kind of see the brilliance of the show. You still kind of see it as righteous retribution. When kids are ultimately embarrassed by their parents in this day and age, it's usually taken with an measurement of good humour. The idea that kids mostly kind of go with their parents' jokes, and for the longest time that's sort of how I took it as well. I went with my parents' humour instead of fighting against it most of the time. Mainly because my parents' humour was also very comparable to my own, because, well, that's how I was raised. I was raised in a house of sarcasm, Blackadder, and, well, Pink Floyd. And a bunch of other stuff, but I'm not going to get into that. But anyway, as an adult, you can look at this show, and it actually is very interesting to see these things. Yeah, parents exist to embarrass us, but it's still kind of fun to watch these things still collapse, to watch these parents go through something that's kind of humiliating within themselves. And then the third option, you look at it as a parent yourself. Honestly, I think if you look at it as a parent, it's a hoot. And I'm sorry, but anyone who thinks that they're looking at this show as a bad thing when you're an adult because kids should learn to respect their elders, allow me to just briefly point out that that is a load of BS. Because, yeah, kids have to respect their parents, but that doesn't mean they should always take their bad jokes or their lateness or just the fact that they're just boring adults who don't really understand the way of a kid. I don't think you should always take it with just good humour. That sometimes retribution is something that's kind of needed. And while do I condone the idea of parents tracking down their kids tracking down their parents and locking them up and doing horrible things to them like they did in a lot of 80s and 90s movies? No, of course not, because I'm not a psychopath. But if you put them on a funny game show with gunk in a tank and you send them flying into it for absolutely no reason, you know what? That's funny. And that is hilarious. And frankly, anyone who doesn't think that, probably you don't have much of a sense of humour to begin with. That's it, really. And so, going through this and looking at all of these various shows, I realised that Get Your Own Back was, may not, I don't know if it was the first one to incorporate the guns tank, as it were, but at the same time, it wasn't beyond of its abilities, and it was incredibly fun to watch. There are other game shows that existed throughout CBBC's lineup, and I can't really go into all of them because, I'll be honest, Get Your Own Back was kind of the only game show I wanted to watch consistently because, well, it was the only show I felt any real bond to. The only other show I can think of that could possibly be considered a game show would have been the likes of, say, Raven, which, if any of you do know what Raven is, well, Raven was kind of this brilliant show set in a fantasy world where a bunch of kids have to solve various puzzles as a team, and then you have, if one of them has less points than the others by the end of the run, then he has to go through what's called the Way of the Warrior. And there's various other things that are sort of thrown into it. But Raven is very different to Get Your Own Back. Well, Get Your Own Back is very consistent, is very headed by the idea of audience booing and cheering for the people in the game show, the idea of the host introducing all of the various games, all of the beautiful things that sort of come with that make it a game show. Raven had its own mystical backstory, if you will, the kind of story that you kind of sit there going, I feel like this is a bit too much, but to be honest, Raven also became popular around the time that Young Dracula became popular, so what the hell do I know, right? It just feels a little weird, that's all I'm going to say. So, why am I making such a short video about this? Well, quite frankly, I wanted to talk about this show very much, and I'll be honest, I've watched episodes of it, but I'll be honest, I didn't really like talking about the individual challenges, because they varied sometimes so much, and I didn't think I could really describe all of them in grand detail. And I'll be honest with you, at the end of the day, the ending and the reason why the parents and the kids are there in that show is all that matters to me. I don't care about anything else. I also only care about the Gunge. Because frankly, Gunge tank, hilarious concept. But you know what, I've decided that I said I was going to review Grace Unplugged at some point, and I will. I will review Grace Unplugged at some point. But I also feel like I need to discuss more old British shows and have a real laugh about it. You know what? What were some of your favourite excuses that you saw kids trying to dunk their parents in the Gunge, eh? And if you could manage to have gotten onto that show, what excuse would you have given for gunging your parents? Because frankly, I kind of want to hear them right now. And it's kind of a fun idea. You know what? Like, subscribe, comment below like I said before. And you know what? Randomfish out, my friends.